So here we are 2 years into making Avatar, which is longer than it took us to do all of Titanic, right through finishing the movie. And we're still 6 months away from starting an entire live-action movie. And it had nothing to do with the virtual production. It was pretty daunting. One of the big challenges of designing this movie was that you have two completely separate worlds coming together with two completely separate modes of technology and two completely separate aesthetics. You've got the Na'vi, who are a weaving culture, and you've got the humans who work with technology, with metals and electronics and with composite carbon fibers, all of this sort of thing, advanced military weaponry. And we had basically different artists worked on these two different cultures.
We brought in people like Ty Rubin Ellenson and Ben Proctor and Paul Osmo, who all worked on that type of material.
Most directors are content to have something kind of look cool, and Jim, that's just not his world at all. When it comes to mechanics and man-made objects or bits of technology or bits of architecture, vehicles, all this sort of stuff, he wants it all to work. He wants it all to make sense. He wants to see an engineering mindset was put into it, a practical mindset. Why is this handle here? What is this piston doing? It's not about strict sort of art direction and cosmetics. It's a more thoughtful design process, and he holds us all to that standard.
All the way from Earth to Hell's Gate, it had to have a human scale to it. It had to have a human livability in it. Jim wanted this contrast of gray tones and kind of depressed look to everything. It looked livable. It looked like it had been there for a long time, or it looked like it kind of gone through the ringer a bit.
Of course, I love all that hardware stuff. I'm an unrequited engineer. I worked with Ty very closely to make sure that the amp suit's shoulder motion would work and was thought out in terms of the various articulations and where the servos would go. Range of motion was all thought through, and where the power supplies would go, where the servos would go, and all that.
When you're approaching things, even inanimate objects, oftentimes you'll find if you listen carefully to what the director's saying, or if you just think about it in terms of the story, they do have to have a narrative quality to them. For example, Scorpion, which is one of our small attack vehicles. It's called the Scorpion. You know, Jim came up with that name, of course, which is an angry, fighting little insect. And in the course of this film, this thing is a deadly force to reckon with.
Scorpions pursue and destroy.
So you want to build that into your design. You want this thing to look aggressive and arrogant and powerful, badass little killing scorpion. That's the shapes, that's the marks you make, and that's what you hope to get on screen.
Once the creative part of designing the movie is done, you then settle down to the hard work of getting it all made, and we were able to ultimately tackle a lot of different items, from the weaponry, the guns, but also the art department sending out many of their designs they'd already finished, such as the link units, the amnio tanks, for us to start building on.
I'm the point person between the art department in LA, run by Rick Carter, and the physical art department of New Zealand. We spent about 3 months doing research and building little models and figuring out how to build the sets. Getting a construction plan and process based on what information, because this was fast-tracked in that they were still designing the sets in LA that we would be building in New Zealand. So we would take every little morsel, every scrap of information we got and run with it.
In our original production plan, we were going to have a number of weeks where Jim was going to be able to get down to New Zealand and treat it like a normal show. And all of a sudden, because of schedule changes and the need to edit, the need to turn over to Weta, that window that Jim was going to be in New Zealand before we started filming shrunk. He was only going to be down there for about 6 days. But we realized we had built a set of tools that could be helpful in this. And we took the virtual production and applied it to our live action sets.
We'd location scout. Just like you'd get in your car and drive out to a location and scout it with a viewfinder, I'd walk into the volume and I'd scout it with the virtual camera.
And Jim was able to rehearse in these virtual environments and made adjustments to the sets down in New Zealand without Jim ever going there.
I'm wondering if we should just sort of slide this part of the set around.
We've got roughly 25 sets worked out. We've got something like 40,000 square feet of floor area, plus the rainforest, another 10,000 square feet, so they're quite big numbers. The crew of 140, you know, it's not a particularly big crew, but this is not the sort of show that you could just throw a lot of people at and say, here, finish that. They're just so technically demanding.
This is really nice. Remember that sentry gun we had? Sure do. Here it is. You can go shoulder, or you can split it and go two hands.
We built all of Hell's Gate that you saw in the interior, from the op center to the commissary where Quaritch makes his first speech to the jail cell that they break out of. We built the 2 shacks where they do the research, and we built the Samson itself. We had to build the link room and the links themselves, and these things had to work.
From Jim on down, you feel like in every department we're working with people who exist at the pinnacle of their craft, and the attention to detail and the demand for excellence on all levels, I think is just mind-boggling.
It's almost like there are 2 different films being made, as there are sort of 2 different worlds. There's the world of the Na'vi and Pandora, and then there's the humans, the stuff that's not necessarily CGI as much. And so it was kind of new for everybody.
You're not wearing a Velcro wetsuit, and everything's built so detailed that it kind of makes your job a lot easier than even being in the mocap world. It feels like a different movie because we've got a whole different cast, to be honest with you. You got Stephen Lang and Giovanni and Dilip, and then you got Michelle as well.
Stephen Lang had respect for ideas of duty and courage and things like that, and he understood how he could channel that into a character that's basically a villain. But he's this very pure creature, and he came in for an audition and he knocked it out of the park. He was just riveting.
It's my job to keep you alive. I will not succeed. Not with all of you. He said, "Do you remember when we met?" And I said, "I sure do." And we'd only met once before, and it's about 20 years ago. It was for Aliens. And he remembered the audition very well. And I find that kind of wonderful, that you can audition for something and then 20 years later you get the part, you know? I think it's great.
There is time to salvage the situation. Park
Shut your pie hole.
Or what? Ranger Rick, you gonna shoot me?
I can do that.
With the live action side of it, we did more weaponry training, fight training.
Quaritch carries this laser-sighted pistol, and this comes into play occasionally.
We work with Stephen inside the amp suit and make it look like that he's been doing it for the last 6, 7 years.
They didn't build this base for a guy in a wheelchair. They built it for able-bodied soldiers. You know, you have to work out how to do it.
We took him along to a local basketball game in the wheelchairs playing basketball, which was pretty cool.
Me and 10 of the stunt guys got some wheelchairs from the hospital and smashed them up a bit. And then you realise that your attention shouldn't be on the wheelchair, it should be on where you're going or what you're aiming for.
This right here is the Samson.
Michelle, she wanted to learn to fly that helicopter, that rotorcraft in the movie as if it were real. So I gave her to a friend of mine who's a helicopter pilot to take her out and show her how to fly a helicopter, and she learned how to fly a helicopter.
You're gonna look like you know what you're doing, but you have to reach up and fire your guns, whatever you're gonna do.
I got a couple of really exciting hours in LA flying a helicopter with Kevin, who actually taught James how to fly helicopters. There's something about being in the air that's just beautiful.
Thank you for flying Air Pandora.
Welcome to sunny New Zealand.
We never really felt like we had this first day, except when we went down to New Zealand, because that was a truly new break for us.
I can just have everybody's attention for a second. This is kind of a pinch me moment. We're actually getting to make this movie. It's a dream project. You know, this script, the first draft of it was written 12 years ago, and we didn't start on the film then because, frankly, the visual effects guys told me I was mad to even try. We had high expectations coming into this, that we were going to see something exceptional, and I would have to say that our expectations have been not only met, but exceeded by the workmanship, the dedication, the professionalism. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody for what it's taken to get to this moment. Now, we obviously have hurdles ahead. There's no such thing as an easy shoot. I think, you know, when people wrap on time, it's because they ran out of ideas. So, don't count on that. Here we go. And action.
Dr. Augustine, you can't be up here.
That's far.
The thing that's hardest to understand about all this is we actually created two completely separate camera systems that had completely different jobs. One was our virtual camera system to capture actors and shoot them virtually in a virtual environment. The other one was the Fusion camera system, which was for shooting live action actors and sets in 3D.
Okay, that's a cut.
I fell in love with 3D when I made my first 3D film, which was in '95, and that was T2 3D. The logistics and the technology required were enormous. The cameras were the size of refrigerators. This didn't seem to be practical. So the Fusion camera was an outgrowth of all the 3D camera development that Vince Pace and I had done for several years previously. It was designed to be a state-of-the-art professional cinema camera for 3D production.
When we first looked at the camera system, we called it the reality camera system, or the RCS, because we were trying to mimic the human eyesight experience, so reality, if you will. Then Jim came with the name Fusion, which really is fusing creativity and technology. It's fusing the two images to form one, and that's really what we're doing.
The design of the camera has been researched for a long period of time. What they've done is just take all the weight off a 3D system and essentially assembled two cameras with a beam splitter that are able to simultaneously photograph two images at the same time. And you have a series of servos that basically you can align the two images or disalign them according to how much 3D you're looking for in a shot. I've never done a film in 3D, so the experimentation was really enticing for me.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joblo remains an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.